Hello. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the most unexpected holdup in history. It's not about a bank robbery, but about the theft of a brain. Mind you, not just any brain, that of Albert Einstein, one of the greatest geniuses of the 20th century. On April 18, 1955, the most famous scientist on the planet, Albert Einstein, took his last breath at Princeton Hospital in New Jersey, United States. He was 76 years old. The announcement of his death had the effect of a bomb. The news made headlines around the world, but this sudden death surprised his family. Einstein seemed in great shape until the day before, when he was seized by violent stomach pains. His relatives, who want to know the nature of the illness that struck him down, asked the hospital doctors to perform an autopsy. This mission is entrusted to the forensic pathologist Thomas Harvey. He is a 43-year-old practitioner who enjoys an excellent reputation. When he is chosen to perform the autopsy of the famous scientist, he cannot believe it. Albert Einstein is the man he admires the most in the world. The scientist is considered at the time to be the greatest genius of the 20th century. In 1921, he won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the photoelectric effect. But he is above all the father of the theory of special relativity and the theory of general relativity. You probably know this formula. Contrary to what people think, it was not Einstein who invented it. On the other hand, he is the one who made it famous. E, energy is equal to m, the mass multiplied by c, squared. C, being the speed of light, about 300,000 kilometers per second. The formula means, roughly, that energy has mass. Thanks to this complex equality and a few others, the scientist has allowed humanity to make a giant step in understanding the universe. In physics, there is therefore a before and after Albert Einstein. Here he is in the autopsy room, in the company of two assistants, facing the body of the great scientist. He is lying on the table and gives the impression of sleeping peacefully. Remember, the day before his death, Einstein complained of violent stomach pains. Dr. Harvey therefore begins by taking an interest in the organs of the abdomen. He has barely begun his work when he observes a large concentration of blood in Albert Einstein's peritoneal cavity. The peritoneal cavity is the space between the two membranes that line the inside of the abdomen. These membranes cover the stomach, liver, and pancreas. With such a large amount of hemoglobin in this area, Harvey has no trouble determining the cause of death. The scientist suffered a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. When it ruptured, the aneurysm caused a very significant internal hemorrhage that was fatal to the scientist. Albert Einstein had little chance of surviving. The causes of death are now established. No need to look any further. Dr. Harvey is done. Well, not quite. As a general rule, the doctor leaves it to his assistants to put the body back together. In the meantime, he writes his report. But this time, that is not what is going to happen. The doctor asks his assistants to leave. He wants to be alone with the scientist's remains. Does he want to meditate? Enjoy a moment of intimacy with him? No, he has another idea in mind. He absolutely wants to know where the scientist got his extraordinary intelligence from. What does the brain of a genius look like? What is different about it from others? So he doesn't hesitate for a second. He shaves the physicist's hair, and, in deathly silence, he opens the cranium and removes the gray matter. All this, of course, without authorization. At the same time, Harvey doesn't take too many risks. Einstein's remains must not be displayed in public or in private. The body must be cremated. The scientist's ashes will be scattered in an unknown place. Einstein did not want anyone to worship him in the slightest. Then, Harvey places the brain in a jar and discreetly takes it back to a laboratory at the University of Pennsylvania. He wants to proceed with his analysis, out of sight. Convinced that this brain is heavier than average, he begins by weighing it. In a normal man, the brain weighs on average 1,350 grams. Einstein's, he thinks, must necessarily be much heavier, 1,500 grams? Maybe more. He places the organ on the scale, and there, surprise, it only shows 1,230 grams. He is lighter than average. Harvey can't believe it. He concludes that intelligence is not measured by the size or weight of a human brain. So where does it come from? He then looks at the convolutions. The convolutions are the sinuous folds of the cerebral cortex. They are delimited by deeper grooves that mark the surface of the brain. The doctor will photograph them from all angles. This is perhaps where Albert Einstein's genius lies. Thomas Harvey measures the distances between some of these folds. It is meticulous and tedious work. In his wake, he cuts the brain into 240 small cubes of 10 centimeters 3 each. Cubes of a little more than a centimeter on each side, which he reduces to thin strips, no thicker than cigarette paper, in order to observe them better under a microscope. In the meantime, Harvey decides not to publish anything, at least for the moment. Then he disappears without leaving an address, with these jars of formaldehyde and their precious contents. Before going further into this story, I can't resist telling you an anecdote that goes back to Albert Einstein's childhood. You'll see, it proves that the brain of a superior intelligence can take time, a lot of time, to get going. When he was a child, Albert Einstein was not quite like the others. You might have guessed that, you might say. Except that little Albert was not very bright, far from it. The child even seems to be somewhat behind the others. It all starts on the day he was born, March 14, 1879, in Ulm, Germany. Little Albert's head is abnormally large. It is so large that doctors fear that the child is suffering from a mental illness. His father, who is an engineer, is very worried, and there is reason to be. At 3.5 years old, our future Nobel Prize winner is simply incapable of uttering a single word. However, a child usually utters his first words between 12 and 16 months. At 3 years old, he makes sentences and knows how to handle certain abstract concepts. At this age, Albert remains desperately mute. Does he suffer from a mental illness? No, of course not. One fine morning, he finally starts to speak. Albert is almost 5 years old. He is what is called a late talker. However, the scientist will remain dyslexic all his life. As an adult, he had the greatest difficulty reading aloud and expressing his ideas in writing. He also had difficulty learning foreign languages such as English. This will not prevent him, 25 years later, from publishing 5 articles that will revolutionize the world of physics and make him the greatest scientist of the 20th century. I almost forgot, in the United States, do you know what they say today about children who talk late? That they suffer from Einstein syndrome. But let's get back to Dr. Harvey. Where is he hiding? And what did he do with his loot? Stephen Levy, an American journalist who had heard about him, went looking for him in the early 70s. And in 1978, he found his trail in Wichita, Kansas. One fine morning, he knocked on his door. Luckily, the doctor opened the door and let him in. The journalist didn't beat around the bush. He asked him if he was in possession of Albert Einstein's brain. At first, Harvey firmly denied it. And then, strangely enough, he changed his mind and asked Levy to follow him. Harvey led him into a small room, a sort of storage room. There, he took out a crate on which was written, Cedrus Costa. A crate of cider? The journalist thinks it's a joke, but the doctor pulls out 2 jars containing a liquid in which are bathed pieces of who knows what. Albert Einstein's brain in pieces. He didn't lie to him. In the process, Stephen Levy publishes a long article, which triggers media interest in Thomas Harvey's discoveries. He reveals that the doctor had found nothing extraordinary in the brain of the greatest genius of the 20th century. He was desperately normal. Are you disappointed? Wait a moment. The story is not quite over. It rebounds in 1982, when Harvey finally agrees to share some of his treasure with his colleagues. He sends histological slides and photographs of the brain to 18 eminent researchers. The result is 6 important publications which ultimately reveal that Albert Einstein had a brain different from mine and yours. His anatomy shows no difference, except for the parietal lobes, which are hypertrophied, that is to say, larger than normal. In addition, in both hemispheres, the morphology of the lateral sulcus, which is located here in the image, is unique compared to that observed in control brains. They are larger than normal, a peculiarity that has already been observed in other great physicists and mathematicians. But be careful. We cannot make the link between this peculiarity and Albert Einstein's intelligence. Besides, what would he have thought if he had still been alive? Probably not much, as he liked to say. Intelligence is not the ability to store information, but to know where to find it. Well, folks, and with that, we end our video today. Write us your thoughts on this in the comments, and let us know about which topics we should make a video about. Otherwise, subscribe to our channel and see you next time here at Wikivedia Plus. Thank you all for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed our content. A big hug, and until then, bye!